Chapter 6, Designing the Shipment Scene, Step-by-Step Movie 6.1. Okay, so we're back in Xcode and we're ready to design the shipment scene. When I'm adding a new scene to the storyboard, I'll often make room by doing a few things. Here I'm going to hide the document outline, and I can even get rid of this lower section here by clicking this button at the top right side to hide the debug area. So you can see I've got all sorts of room now, and I'll even double click the background of the storyboard to zoom out. So I need to add a table view controller, so I'll click here, drag it over, and I'll drop it on the right hand side. I'll double click to zoom back in. Now for my next step, I need to create a segue between this cell and the new scene. To do that, I first click on the cell to select it. I hold the control key down, click, and I drag over. And notice that the other scene becomes highlighted in blue. Now if I let go of the mouse button, and then I can let go of the control key, I can select what type of segue I'd like to create. And in this case, I'm going to select Push under Selection Segue. And here you can see, if I move this over a little bit, there's a segue, basically with an arrow pointing from one scene to the next. And there's a few other things to notice. In the delivery scene on the left, notice a gray arrow known as a disclosure indicator has been added to that cell. That's a visual cue to the user that if they tap that cell, they'll navigate to another scene. So it's nice that was automatically added for us. So we have our segue, and you might notice also too that on the right hand side we have this new scene, and when we created that segue, it added a navigation bar to the top of this view. That's because the delivery scene on the left has a navigation bar, and the new scene needs one in order to navigate back to the delivery scene. And we'll see how that works in just a bit. Now, if I click directly on the segue, notice that the first cell is highlighted in blue. This is a visual design time indicator showing you that the first cell is what triggers the segue transition to the next scene. So now we're ready to set up the shipment scene. To start with, we'll double click here and we'll change the title to Shipment. So now I can show my document outline again. And if I scroll down, you can see I can select the table view here. And when I do that, the table view in the design surface is selected. Now in the attribute inspector, I'm going to change the content to static cells. You can see that gives them a different look. And I'll set the style to grouped. That gives the cells that grouped look. Now our table view is going to need two sections. So we can create the second section by going over here, clicking the up arrow next to sections, and voila, we have two. And notice that both sections have 3 cells. Now in our second section we only need 2 cells, so I'm going to select here, click once, then click again. I've selected that final cell, and I can press the delete key. And that leaves 3 cells in the first section and 2 cells in the second section. So we'll now set up the customer's name in the first cell. So I'll go ahead and select this. I'm going to change the style to basic, which adds this title label on the left hand side. I'm going to click 2 more times on the cell, and you can see I've now selected the label. And I'm going to set the text to our friend Feng Wang. And press return, and you can see it changes. And I'd also like the center align, so I'll click the alignment here, and it's centered. Now let's set up the customer address in the second cell. So now I'll select the second cell. I'll set the style to subtitle, and I'm going to manually add a disclosure indicator. To do that, I go to Accessory and say Disclosure Indicator. So although it would automatically add this later on when we do the next scene, I just wanted to show you how you can do that manually. With the second cell still selected, we'll click over here twice until we get to the title label. With the second cell still selected, I want to change the title here, so I'll click and then double click to put it in edit mode. And I'm going to change the text to 3251 20th Avenue. Now I'll go to the font setting and I'll press the down arrow twice to set it to 14. That'll give us a little more room for our address. I'll double click the subtitle and I'll set the text to San Francisco, California 94132. And I can click off to see what it looks like. So I'm going to create a few empty cells now that can be used later on. So I'll select the third cell and press Command D twice. That creates two new empty cells. So now we're ready to set up the phone and text cells. So I'll select the third cell. I'll change its style to left detail. And that adds our title label in blue and our detail label. I'm going to select title. I can click it twice. And I'll go to the Attributes Inspector and I'll set the title to phone. And I'll set the font size to 15. I'll double click the detail label and I'll change its text to 555 392 0201. If I click anywhere else, we can see my new cell. Now, since the fourth cell of the shipment table is similar to the third cell, let's just duplicate the third. So I select the third cell, I type Command D, and I've created an identical cell. So all I need to do here is change the text from phone to text. Click off of that. And now I have my phone and text cells. Now I'm ready to set up the delivery status cell. I select the fifth cell in the first section. I'll change the style to right detail. This adds a title label here and a detail label over there. I'm also going to add a disclosure indicator. So under accessory, I'll set that to disclosure indicator. And as you can see, it adds the arrow there for me. Now I double click the title label and I'll set this to delivery status. I'll change the font size to 15, so I'll go down one here. Next I double click the detail label. I'm going to change that text to on vehicle for delivery. I'll change the font size to 14 and I'll click off of the label. And there's our delivery status. Now for the last cell in our first section, we're going to set up the shipment ID cell. So we'll select the sixth cell in the first section and I'll set the style to left detail. I select the title label and I'm going to change the text attribute to ID and I'll set the font to 15. I'll double click the detail label and I'll change the text to this number. It's a make-believe number. You could really type in anything you want here. I'll click off the cell, and that completes our first section. So now we're ready to set up the shipment detail section. So I'm going to show you how to select more than one cell and change attributes for them both at the same time. So what I do is I select the first cell, I hold the Shift key down, and I select the second cell. Now I'm going to go to Style. I'll change it from Custom to Basic. And as you can see, the title label gets added to both of them. Now I'll select the first cell again. I'll click 2 more times to select the title label. I'm going to change the text. 1 iPod Touch. I'll set the font size to 14. Either press return or click off of that. See my change. I select the second cell. I click 2 more times to select the label. I'm going to change the text to 1 Apple TV. And again, I'll set the font to 14. So that completes the setup for the shipment scene. Let's see how it looks in the simulator. I press the Run button, and our delivery scene appears. If I tap this button, or click on it anyway, notice I'm seeing the details for Feng Wang's shipment. So that navigation between the scenes was automatically taken care of for us. And notice there's a little back button that was automatically added too. So if I click Deliveries, go back to the delivery scene, click the item, go back to the shipment scene, and I can go back and forth. So now we can go back to Xcode and click the Stop button.